Hi everybody, it's Jennifer. Welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to be showing you a couple of options that could be good for everyday cards or maybe even Mother's Day. And it includes a set, it's a stencil set from Altenew. So with that, let's go ahead and get started. So let's take a quick peek at the set. This is by Altenew, as I had mentioned, and it's vases. And what I like about it is it comes with stamps, which I'm showing here. There's 3 different vases in here and a couple different sayings, but it comes with this stencil set that goes over it. And I'll show you the benefit of what that's going to do for us. And then on the other part of it, it comes with some masks. So I have a hard time, or I'm lazy, maybe I'm just lazy, making some masks. So when I want to add color to a card, this is a real huge benefit when you don't want to color in the place you just stamped. So the set also comes with a brochure, and that's what's there. So I also am using, this was May's Simon Says Stamps monthly card kit. But if you don't have it, that's okay. It comes with this paper too. Very cool, by the way. They are out of the kit, but the stamp and I believe the paper are still available online if you want it. And here's some additional sayings. I felt like over the last couple of videos, I kept using the same dies for sayings, so I ordered some new ones. I was pretty excited to use them. But if you don't have that Simon Says stamp set, that's okay. You don't even need to order it. Look in your stash, see what you've got that are flowers, and it's going to work. So I already did up a sample of what the first card is going to look like, or at least the base of it. And here's some of the things that you're going to need to create it, or if you have similar items, that's fine too. As I mentioned, we're going to use the stamp, we're going to use the stencil kit, we're going to use a brush for adding in some color. We're going to use the black Hero Arts ink so we could stamp the vase on here, which is what I'm about to do. And then I also have some Copic colors that I'm going to use for coloring in the flower. So I've already put the stamp in here, and I'm just using that Hero Arts ink. For me, this works the best for coloring with Copic markers or any alcohol markers. But if you have a ink that you prefer, go ahead and use that here. What I like about using the Misty or the Tim Holtz stamper here is sometimes it's hard to get that first stamp right, and I wanted to go back with some additional ink just to make sure that I really had this down and you could clearly see the vase. Because what I'm about to do with this vase is add a little color to it, so I wanted to make sure that that black was really showing through. I like to be able to do things in batches. So I'm going to go ahead and work on the second card here, and this is the base to it. This is the second vase. And you can see I'm going to use some additional colors in here. Some are similar items. I use the Copic markers. So you'll see me do all of that in just a minute. But first, I just want to go ahead and put the vase on the card. You can see with both of these cards, the ones I'm making, that I actually cut these down. So initially I'm stamping them on a 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inch card, but ultimately once I get them in place and on the card, I will cut that down so I'm able to use other cardstock behind it when I go to assemble the card. So you saw me just a second ago cleaning off the stamp a bit, and I'll tell you why. When I did this vase, and it was only this vase that it happened on, that middle section always tends to pick up the black ink, sometimes more than others. And so what I noticed when I did a couple of samples is that that ink also transferred onto the paper. So I just go in and clean it off with a little wipe, and you won't see it come through. I don't know if anyone else has had that issue, but with this particular one, I did. With the third vase, I wanted to do something a little bit different. I wanted to make it a little bit more opaque. And so what I wind up doing here is, instead of using the black ink for the stamp, I wind up using the color that I am going to use to start to color in the base. And I actually wind up doing multiple colors, but it's the base color in here, and it's by Stamping Up. I'll include below all the information I have as far as what I used on each of the cards, but chose not to use black here, although you could if you wanted to. You can also see with this base, I wind up cutting it out. So really, if you have a scrap piece of paper, you could just stamp directly on that. You don't need anything this size. It's just what I chose to do. I wanted to do something a little bit different with it. So what I'm going to call part 2 of this process is really coming in and coloring the vase, but really making it look like glass on the first 2 cards. So I have some sea glass ink that I have, and just going to put a light coat of this down on both of the cards, and this is where the stencil comes in very handy. So with the first 2 cards, I used the same sea glass ink. For this one, I mentioned I have some Stampin' Up ink that I'm using. They're both green tones. The first one's a pretty light green. So anything that you have in your stash, go ahead and dive in. I wind up actually using 3 different colors on here because the first time I do it and kind of go through the colors, it's pretty light. So you want to, if you want to keep this where it is just light, you could just leave it right there. I wanted to make this a little darker, and you'll see why as I finish off the card in just a few minutes. If you haven't used these brushes for ink blending, oh my gosh, they are what the name describes, which is a life changer. I'll link those below too, so you can check them out if you don't have them. So let's begin on part 2, and this is where I'm going to dive into the Simon Says stamp set, and you could again look at what you have on hand. The first one's pretty easy. It's just a rosebud, and I'm going to have to draw in the stem because it's just not long enough, but I thought this flower worked perfectly. So that's what you're going to see me do here. You'll see me draw in with a marker, a black marker, so I can use it to color in with my alcohol inks. So the next thing I do is I'm going to add this, it's like a light warm gray color. This is also a Stampin' Up ink towards the bottom. I just want to give it some dimension down there, you know, as if it were maybe sitting on a table or something like that, and more of an abstract way. So this is where I'm going to use the mask that's already cut out and provided in the kit, which is great. So if you don't have this set and you've got something very similar, you could also use like Post-it notes or something like that to create a mask. So you don't have to have this kit to do it, but you get the general idea. So I'm just using the blending brush again, and I'm going to go ahead and add that along the bottom. So on the second vase here, I'm going to do something very similar. I have these, this is part of the Simon Says stamp kit, and I have these branches that I'm going to put in there. I will actually set, you'll see in the card, the final card, a flower in front of it, but I thought it'd be great to add some like branches or leaves in the vase. Again, if you don't have something like this and it's something where you can draw pieces of it in, that's fine too. I'm not a good drawer, but if you are good at drawing, you could probably draw the leaves right on into this vase. So I'm just coloring in here with some Copic markers. There's really 3 that I use in the green tone. And I'm curious, do you guys have any favorite colors of Copic marker or any other markers that you use for leaves? These are kind of the ones that I go to. I don't know that they're always the best, but they tend to work for me. And I actually wind up coloring with the darker color down. You'll see me do it here, but down into the vase. So not that much of the black ink is showing through. So pretty simple, not anything super creative there, just color in the leaves, and then we will add this yellow. I use Distress Oxide here and it's mustard seed to give it this. It needed something around the edges, right? So to give it this kind of glow or something, when I put it on the paper, it's not so stark white. And so it's pretty simple. Again, I'm going to cut this down so it doesn't have to be perfect around the edges, but I'm using that mask to put it over it. And then once I cut it down, and I like the fact that it went off the edge a little bit, the leaf did. So you can kind of play around with that and be fun and creative. But what I wind up doing is putting the yellow all the way around the edges. So one other thing I did there is I did cut along the top with an X-Acto knife through that 3rd vase. And the reason for that is I'm actually going to put flowers in the middle of it. And these flowers, I'm not going to show you on screen. I had some already done from another set. Again, you get the basic idea of how you can use flowers and put them in there. So let's go ahead and assemble this card. I wanted to do some paper layering, and so I had this brushed silver card in the background with this peach sort of border around it, and I wind up using this love, and this is why I think it could be an everyday card or it could be like a Mother's Day card, and assemble that over it. So it's pretty simple. I put some Nuvo drops there, just in different colors, and call that card done. So for this second card, I have some pink cardstock from another set that I had that I'm going to use as the base. And then the flowered paper behind it really came from the kit from Simon Says Stamp. But look at your stash. What do you have that you can use? I just thought this was pretty easy. The colors matched, so it looked pretty cool. And then the flower, again, this is something I had already done on a previous video. This one's specifically from Altenew, so it's a different stamp set, but there is a stamp similar in the Simon Says stamp kit there that would work too, and then you could just use Copic markers and give it a quick coloring like I did on the rosebud. So I use this big hugs. It's one of my new sayings, and I just like the word hugs. This card had a lot going to it. I actually put the flower onto the card and attached it with some foam so it sticks up a little bit. I added some little drops, Nuvo drops around the sides, and again, just wanted to use the hugs. Big, I tried playing around with it. Big just didn't seem to fit onto the card, so I wanted to keep it simple, and that finishes card 2. So with this third card, I mentioned putting the slit across the top so I could put the flowers in it. I'm using just a white basic cardstock for the card, and then I had some of these papers that came with that kit, and I'm just picking one of the patterns out of there. What I liked about it has these butterflies. I thought that'd look really cute, and then also it had this white space so I could put the vase there, and that's what I wind up doing. The ribbon there, the purple ribbon, I actually put around the belly of that vase just to kind of give it a little bit of, I don't know, uniqueness, but also it helped me put the Friends sediment there, and it kind of stood out a little bit more. I also put some Nuvo drops throughout the card, so you'll see them there. And if you want to know the 2 inks that I used on those flowers, I'll include them below, but they're here too, different inks. But that finishes off card 3. So here are the final 3 cards. Take a moment, comment below, what are you going to do for your mom or your wife or maybe even a friend for Mother's Day? Let me know below, and take a moment, give me a thumbs up if you did like this video, and I look forward to the next one. Stay tuned. Take care.